Hi, John.
John?
We got to let go.
I have to turn my camera off.
It's okay.
Okay, that should work for sound. Can you hear us, John?
I sure can. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can. All right.
Off our devices.
Okay, we've got just a few minutes to get some stragglers in.
Did you see
Come on,
Janet's-
stragglers.
Janet's email.
Yes,
Late afternoon.
Janet is not coming. Bob Reinhardt is not coming either. We have Bennett Hudlin from our Affordable Housing Committee here, which is
good.
exciting.
So, public?
Welcome.
Yes.
And we did receive, well, I could share some other updates, I guess, when we start.
We get started.
Yeah, okay.
Four of us here. John Morgan will be joining us, I think.
Hooray. How are you?
Eric, how are you?
See you soon.
Hey, Aaron.
Good to see you.
Hi.
Thanks for
Hi.
coming.
Glad to be here.
We're built environment.
Excellent.
We have a push for our Affordable Housing
Affordable housing,
Committee.
that's great.
Well done.
Has that always been called the Hammonasset Room?
No, we've just stole the technology out of the Hammonasset Room, and never updated
We're borrowing.
its name.
We're borrowing.
So we'll see how long before it returns back to the Hammonasset Room. Hello,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, John.
John Morgan.
Hello.
Hi, John.
Following Bob's advice, I purchased what's legally required.
It's good.
A little late
It's a-
reading.
This is a page turner. Let me tell you, this is just a.
Actually, that's the easy version.
That's.
We can do, we can give you the hard
See, I'm not an attorney.
It is
so-
actually.
Oh,
Just wait till you get to the last page where they tell you if you're pretty sure nobody's going to sue you, ignore all of the previous stuff.
yeah.
Should we
Well, I
wait? Aaron,
admire the
it's
guy
7.
writes when he's uncertain about something, he says, there's
Yeah,
uncertainty here.
Oh, yeah, Mike's
It's
a great
which I
land use
thought
attorney.
excellent.
it's very plain
Because you need
language.
to say when it's.
Yeah, to admit that.
When the,
Well, you can tell by case law that
when the case
Go
goes
back
on,
and forth.
it seems to go back and begin, when
Yeah.
it's the way life is sometimes. It's great to see.
should we get started? Well, Charlie Walls. Haven't heard.
We should get started. Let me unmute us and get us going. No, not that. Just us. Okay. Go for it, Madam Chair.
Great. I'd like to call this meeting of August 3rd, 2023, Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Tonight is our first meeting of the month, so it's the planning meeting, which is focused this year on the plan of conservation and development. We'll be talking about the built environment, and I think we jump right in then to updates and topics from John Guskowski. John, is Rachel here or is she?
No, she's unavailable this evening.
We have a new team member who is taking Steve's place. That's Rachel. What's Rachel's last name?
Burstein.
First, thanks.
She's actually not. She's not a new team member. She's new to this project, but she actually helped us write the affordable housing plan last year.
Oh, so you want my
Um,
number. Great.
I'm sorry. Point of order there, Aaron. The thing that I heard was recording stopped. I don't know. And
Oh, should
There we go.
take
Okay.
two?
okay. Thanks.
Good catch.
Should I call it to order again? We've called to order our meeting, and thank you, John, for catching that. I wasn't listening either.
We are live streaming, but yes.
We are live
we're good.
streaming.
I saw that part.
Sorry,
Why we have consultants.
I clicked
Yes,
too
exactly.
quickly, I guess, huh?
Okay, well, so what we are here this evening to do, so you'll recall where we are is divided up between our natural environment and our built environment. We've sort of wrapped up preliminarily our natural environment discussion and established several goals and our policies and action items. We began our conversation last month about the built environment, sort of filling out, and I'll share on the screen, sort of the worksheet that we've been going off of, which covers it basically sort of open-ended questions about looking at like recent elements of progress in areas of housing, economic development, roads, sidewalks, transportation, town facilities, emergency facilities, zoning, and infrastructure. We talked about significant events of the last 10 years, concerns, and hopes. And we sort of basically had an open-ended discussion on that. And then there was some hope that we would reach out to some of the stakeholders, particularly in those areas of housing and economic development and infrastructure, and get some thoughts about their own goals, their own hopes, and things that we should be making priority over the next 10 years. And then the hope is we'll combine that as well as some written input from some of the stakeholders and round this into sort of a draft set of policies and recommendations for the next month. So that's where we are. And I will turn it over to, well, I guess the first question is, Aaron, I believe you probably recirculated this worksheet to see if anyone had any reaction to that. And then perhaps if there are stakeholders that are joining us that want to talk a little bit about their goals and ideas.
Good. Yes, John. So I guess first from commission members, did anything else come to mind after reading through our notes from last meeting?
I think, I thought it was a really good discussion, and I think it's a good start for us to come within ourselves, come up with a list and see what topics and issues were important to us. Kind of blink reaction at our July meeting. So now we're opening up and hope to hear from stakeholders. Aaron, I was wondering if you have a list of the stakeholders that you could share with us of who were sent.
Yeah, pretty much
The
our
questionnaire.
input. Yep, we've got EDC, WPCA,
Oh, great.
chamber. Some of these are not affordable housing, historic, both society, historic district, beach and rec, senior services. The only ones I have not gotten to are Board of Ed. But we do have present this evening. I've received comments in writing from one of our affordable housing committee members, Jane Zenario, who actually her comments touched a little bit on natural resources and built environment, which is a good balance. And I can share those comments with you here. I can screen share them. I also, we have in our audience, two members of our Affordable Housing Committee, and also it's Tom, right?
Yep.
Tom is our chair of our WPCA. And I'm hoping you can update us a little bit on your facility study and some concerns of.
Can I interrupt with a
Wastewater.
question?
Yeah.
What is the WPCA? Water Pollution Control Authority.
And also, since our last meeting, we received feedback from the strategic planning process, some of their public outreach. The consultant had put together a summary report from the survey results, as well as the visioning session, the interviews, the individual interviews, and some focus groups. And so those are pretty concise, those general goals and comments, and I can share those as well. I have those, I can screen share.
I made a list before I came to.
Oh, okay, so we could read them off also, that's just as easy.
This is a perfect segue, I think. There were 8 key themes that seem to come up at every session. So I'm just gonna read them and they're done. Actually, she said they were done alphabetically, but it looks like they're not quite alphabetical, but I'll just read through the list that she had from those sessions, various sessions. Diversity of housing opportunities, character of the community, thoughtful growth management, high-performing government, multimodal transportation, vibrant economic health, preservation of natural, green, and open spaces, and quality education opportunities, which came up repeatedly. So those are the 8 key themes that I guess the strategic plan will
And I think
dive
some of
further
them,
into.
yeah, some of them cross over here into the POCD, I
Absolutely,
think, for
yeah.
sure. Economic growth, you know, you talk about some zoning as far as particular characteristics or qualities of, you know, design, housing diversity, transportation.
Did anybody mention housing quantity,
As in density? Or-
as in more housing period?
Yeah.
Whether it's more density would be a subcategory for
Sure, it
that.
came
I
out.
would, I would think that the idea of diversity of housing opportunities would speak
Oh,
to
that's a great phrase.
more.
Opportunity, okay,
More,
that captures it.
more in
Great.
various, yeah.
That was the phrasing, wasn't it? Diversity of housing opportunities?
Diversity of housing opportunities.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to follow up too, maybe a little bit about the strategic plan, there's one more meeting of the committee and then there will be a retreat in September, beginning of September, which is when it seems all of the main issues will actually be put into a plan, or at least a draft of a plan. So that's their schedule. Did you want to add anything more to that?
No, I don't have any details actually on the specifics of the retreat. I do know, I am a part of the working group for the strategic plan, and Carol is on the
Ad hoc
committee. So it's nice opportunity to be able to have consistency between both plans and make sure that everybody's aware of the efforts that each group is making. So far, that's worked out very well.
And how they complement each other.
Right.
Yeah.
We've made some progress in towards our website, getting up and linked with all of our YouTube videos for all of our planning meetings, you know, since last September, believe it or not, we're coming up on a year now. That's when we kicked it off. And just links to all of our information, our general themes, and having hopefully a one-stop location for anybody from the public to see where we are currently in the POCD, and also to include a link to the strategic plan side of that. So I'll let you know once that's completed and live and share it. And I think that's all I had for specific updates.
Any questions from anyone? John Morgan,
Nope.
and shall we open it up to stakeholders? Sure. Put you all on the spot. First, welcome again.
And if we can't hear you, I can give you a microphone, Bennett, if we need.
Thank you. I am Bennett Pudlin. Eric and I are 2 of the 3 members of the policy working group of the Affordable Housing
John, can you hear?
Committee.
A little bit, yeah.
I think I gotta get you closer to.
Yeah, it's very difficult to hear.
Giving us to
If you could just try and.
try it again.
Oh, that's louder too.
Eric and I, along with Anthony and Bob, who couldn't be here tonight, working group housing committee that's looking at town policy, obviously starting with plan of conservation and development, strategic plan, ultimately the P and Z regulations, and other things. Our committee, which was really not seated until February, is charged with advising the town on how to implement the recommendations of the Affordable Housing Plan, which, as you know, was adopted a little over a year ago and submitted to the state of Connecticut as required by law. And as part of that, we will be perhaps updating that plan as well. We have spent all of the spring informing ourselves, coming up to speed. None of us, there's 7, none of us served on that committee. They drafted the plan. So we've been talking to experts with a lot of Aaron's guidance. We're also participating in the Regional Council of Government Working Group on affordable housing, and we're taking advantage of the assistance provided by the consultants hired by ESCROG to help the communities get going. Our immediate plan is to go on a listening tour. We've been sort of identifying and talking with key informants of various organizations, groups, constituencies within the town, and asking for the opportunity to meet with their organization at one of their meetings. Not surprisingly, nobody wants us to come in the summer. We've got a large list of groups that have promised us come September and October that they may have to have this common listen. And we are quite clear that in this first round, we really do want to listen. We want to make sure that the entire community has an opportunity to be heard so that we can understand beyond the data and the statistics that we're looking at, what the lived experience has been with regard to housing residents of Madison, particularly in Madison, but other issues that they've had, and any concerns they have, issues that they'd like more information about. Our hope is that we'll be able to compile a substantial body of input from these listening sessions and use that to inform our broader outreach to the entire community in terms of responding to the concerns and questions that have been raised. I think it's fair to say that affordable housing has not been very high on most people's agenda in Madison. And so I think there's a desire for more information. I think there's also, to some extent, a kind of knee-jerk reaction that is based on a lot of misinformation. Again, we don't want to start out by telling people what they need to know, what's good for them and good for the community. We really do want to hear. We don't have a time frame for when those will wrap up. I think it is very likely that it'll go through the end of the calendar year before we're ready to move into the next phase. We haven't decided that as a committee. So I think with that background, I'd like to just turn it over to Eric and then up for a dialogue with you all.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Bennett. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. We're really trying to learn and listen. And part of that is from the community and part of that is from experts. So it's been developers and finance groups and nonprofits who also have come in and talked about the challenges of building more diverse and affordable housing in the town. And that really is multifaceted, right? It's infrastructure to support density in housing. We talk about sewer and water. It's transportation and the availability of transportation to support those communities. It's the financing of these projects in order to support them. It's the planning and zoning rules and regulations that allow greater density or these program projects to be built. So there is no silver bullet solution. And it really has to kind of be looked at holistically and brought to bear across all of those things. So I think that is, one thing to keep in mind. And I also think it's really interwoven with a lot of the priorities you brought up. So we talked about economic development. Well, it's hard to have economic development if you can't get young people and employees into the community. We value our schools in this town, but it's hard to support a multitude of AP classes if we don't have enough young students in the community because families can't come in and afford it. So it really
For teachers.
for teachers, right? Because you need teachers to teach those programs and, and I've seen that, my daughter's in the school system. I see that in some of the class sizes are getting smaller and smaller. And so how do you support that diversity of programming in our excellent school system over time if we can't bring new people in because of some of these challenges? So I really think it's not a standalone issue. It's an interrelated issue with a lot of the priorities that you're looking at. And it's not a standalone silver bullet issue to solve. We really have to think about it.
If I could just add one other thing. Our charge is affordable housing. Obviously, that is something that we're going to spend a lot of energy on. But I don't think we can get to a solution for the reasons I was saying without looking more comprehensively at housing. And so I would hope that a tagline for us would be affordable housing for all. Because it speaks to the one of the items on the strategic plan list, right? It's really the diversity of housing. I spent, was on the board of finance, I spent many years as liaison to the Senior Service Commission. And we worked closely with David and talked to a lot of people. And no surprise that we are an aging community, and no surprise that there are an awful lot of elder members of the community living in the family home, which is way too big for them, and an ever-increasing number of widowed women living alone in the family with no way to maintain it, and not enough realistic options to downsize. And the flip side of that is we have a lot of people wandering around in 5,000 foot luxury palaces with nobody else at home who would love to downsize to something appropriate to their lifestyle and their profile of the business where we go. And obviously, this all falls together. Providing good options for seniors to downsize is opening up housing for new families to come in and repopulate our schools and our sport teams and provide volunteers for the volunteer fire department and on and on and on. So it's totally related. Much of that falls under your
And just for those, and I think, John, I saw you getting closer to the screen, so I think you couldn't hear. Bennett was mentioning seniors and being in, your family home and not being able to downsize. And so that just, he was, emphasizing the need for housing diversity and the ability to, have the rungs of housing here where you can either downsize or and allow new families in some of the larger
Family
colonial,
homes.
yeah.
So I'd like to say that personally, I think the affordable housing plan is excellent and really great. And so to hear you talk about it as sort of your starting point, and then you're kind of moving on beyond that in so many different ways. I don't think I realized that that's what your committee was doing. So it's really great to hear you say that. That said, I was hoping you'd have something more concrete for us that we could just say, oh, and by the way, refer to the affordable housing group because they're solving all the problems. But I think that this gives us the opportunity to work together on it and see where we go. I mean, we're thinking very holistically as well, even expanding to include the natural environment and the built environment, even though we're starting out by approaching them separately, but what we're finding is they are very interrelated as well. And I think that our previous plans of conservation and development have been more sort of siloed or different sections. And what we'd like to do is make sure that this reads more sort of uniformly and sets priorities and standards for everybody and am I?
Well,
being too
and
broad
just to
here?
kind of weave the common themes through both the natural environment context and the built environment, and seeing how they interrelate together. And I see actually that Mark Edmiston is here as well. And Mark, if you just wanted to raise your hand while we're on the affordable housing, Mark's the chair of our committee, and I don't know if you're here wearing your Historic Society hat or your affordable housing hat, but if you'd like to add anything else on affordable housing, Mark, I can allow you to talk as well.
Also,
and
Erin,
join us.
would it be helpful to put up our different themes, the kind of concurrent themes running through the POCD that we hope to address? Or John, maybe you could do that?
Yeah, I know. We used to have two screens taking notes here. John, oh, you got it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so, okay, we're at, yeah, so I don't know if you can see that all right. But vitality and connectivity, resilience and sustainability, and opportunity and growth. Let's see if I can get them all on the same screen. Not quite. Too many words in between.
It's a lot of words, but we've been working on these as sort of pairs that go hand in hand and that also apply throughout the natural environment and the built environment. And because we're just drafting, we'll see where it goes and if it continues to work the way we hope it will. Anybody want to add anything else?
Well, question for you. So you were mentioning a scenario regarding diversity of housing, and somebody's got a large house, kids go to college, so they kind of like to stay in town like a small house, but that's not really available. So my question is, why isn't it available? What's the market reason or the economic reason it's not readily available?
Well, I think there's two core reasons. One is land use, right? So the standard lot size in the town is 1 acre, I believe, right? And so you have large lots that are expensive and building costs are high. And so when a developer comes in and looks at building a single family house to justify the house on that lot and the building costs, you end up creating, a fairly large and expensive house today based on building costs. I think we had even an affordable housing developer came in and talked about building costs, and the unit cost, even in a dense building, was really high, right? In a multi-family structure. And so you expand that into a new single family home. And that's why you see new single family homes. I mean, first of all, there's not many available now, but even those that are $800,000 and up, right? And because of those, I think, economic drivers at the end of the day.
Cost of building and land's expensive.
Yes.
Okay.
And the zoning requirements for 1 and 2 acre lots.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that feeds into it, right? So if you can create greater density, you can start to bring the cost down because your land and infrastructure costs become more dense, less expensive.
And does accessory apartments play into a possible solution? Where are we on that? When we address the topic?
So your land use zoning regulations allow accessory dwelling units in town to be built, but we haven't really identified what the impediment is as to why more. But it is, people have to fund them, the cost to do that. If you let's say you have an existing single family house, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, you have a septic system. Well, your septic system is probably only built for the size of your house, so you have to upgrade your septic system, you have to put in the infrastructure to add those. So they're not inexpensive to go build a 4 or 5 or 800 square foot unit either.
800, I think, is that currently?
800 square feet is the maximum
Yeah.
for an accessory apartment currently.
Yeah, I think that's problematic, and also it's for a single residence, right? You don't allow duplexes, so having options that allow alternatives to one family, no matter how small, in one dwelling unit on one lot. That's a paradigm that we have to be able to thoughts now. Infrastructure,
Can you use the mic?
I'm sorry.
Bennett, just
Yeah,
so that, because our folks on,
I
I can't hear.
Yeah, and infrastructure is a critical issue here, obviously. We don't have sewers, and we have water issues in a lot of places. We're gonna have to tackle that. There was an article in a Harvard Business Journal not too long ago that it was an interview with a major for-profit developer who said, given the increase in interest rates, it's getting harder and harder to make money with market rate housing, and they're looking to affordable housing because of all the subsidies.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, and who would have thought, right? It's sort of upside down, but there are substantial subsidies available. Tax credits being probably the primary vehicle that most private developers or all projects have to use because some of it's investment. But on top of that, there's grant money, increasing amounts of grant money, especially right now. With a huge statewide emphasis. So that in some ways, this seems like an ideal moment for Madison to figure this out.
Madam Chair, Mark Edmiston did
Okay.
join us. Mark, did you want to say anything about affordable housing as well and join this conversation?
I do. I couldn't hear everything that Bennett was saying, so I'm not sure. I don't want to repeat anything he said, but I think the key thing for the town to think about is that in order to accomplish the goals that we've stated we have, we need to be active, not passive. I mean, the town has to actually look at ways in which the town can effectively go out and bring in affordable housing. I don't think we can really sit back and just change some zoning regulations and hope things will work out. And I think there are other towns have done a similar thing. And I think that is something that I think you should be considering as you go through this.
So Mark, I want to put on our historic preservation hats for a second and also say that I think looking into adaptive reuse of a lot of the historic structures that we do have, especially with accessory development, or, I know I have a 1870s barn that's sitting waiting to be done.
What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. The first affordable housing built this year.
Right. So I think there are many options that the town can look at and move on, as you say. If we had, I don't know about applying for grants or how making financing more easy for all of us, really, and finding solutions to the problems. But I think the interest is there, and the options. There are many options. John Guskowski, you also. I really liked what you said at one of the affordable housing presentations about uppercase affordable housing and lowercase affordable housing. And I do feel that Madison has some, maybe the prices have all gone so crazy that there's nothing in the $300,000 range anymore. Maybe I'm just totally naive and out of it. But, there do seem to be a number of smaller houses on smaller lots, or maybe not on smaller lots. And I've wondered how that affects our overall picture of affordability.
Well, I think John, you're going to win. There is sort of official affordable housing, meaning that it is deed restricted as affordable. And then I think there is the diversity in housing that you're speaking of. Are there just homes and apartments available that, are at a more affordable price point? And while the Affordable Housing Committee is, I think, focused on that deeded affordable housing, I think we're also supportive of just more diversity in housing, because more inventory will free up lower cost structures for more people to be in. And as Bennett said, retirees to downsize, et cetera. So all of that is good on sort of maybe the uppercase, lowercase affordable housing.
But your focus is still on the more deed restricted,
It is.
official affordable, uppercase affordable
Right.
housing. Okay. So that's something we should talk about too then, is the different forms of affordable housing, not just deed restricted.
Oh, you mean what counts to the state's definition of capital A?
Or
affordable
not, you
housing?
know, or just what in terms of our housing diversity, what can we do?
I'll just go on excuse me, a comment and a question. The comment is that usually in a document, when I see the word holistic, I immediately assume it's not worth reading, because it tends to be if we all get in the hot tub together, everything's good. It tends to be, it correlates highly with being vacuous. This is a case where I think it's the exact opposite, that, you know, you make a really good case that all these factors put together and have to be seen as interacting or where we want to go, and we're not going to get there. So I think it really makes sense. And I think this notion of holistic also would allow us to address what I've called the missing stakeholders. You know, folks who don't show up to testify, these school teachers who'd like to live in Madison, but don't live in Madison. They work in Madison. A lot of people who really make this, who work here, but can't afford to live here, although they'd like to. So this holistic approach, God, I can't believe I said the word holistic, it really seems to me, I learn a lot and I'm slowly but surely. So anyway, I think that's just really positive. My question though is that it seems to me that, you know, a lot of towns in Connecticut are at least thinking about this, and some are doing a lot. Is there any systematic way, I guess this is a question for you guys as well as John, to see what we can learn from comparable towns? And then, well, they tried this, whatever you do, don't do that. But there are lessons.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's part of what we've been doing this spring. We've been reaching out to our neighbors, and we will be inviting others in. We've got a whole list of folks that we'd like to hear from. Tremendously good things happening in Saybrook, Clinton, Guilford. They're out there ahead of us on this work. Believe it or not, Fairfield is probably the leading community in the state, and we hope to hear from them. So, yeah, there's no sense in completely reinventing the wheel. And as I said, SCROG, through their consultants and through their working, all of us, our regional communities together, we are sharing with each other. So I think that it's a good chance we can do it. I did want to sort of respond to Mark's point about we need to really be aggressive in setting an agenda to get this done. We were very surprised, I was at least very surprised to hear that in the main federal subsidy, if you will, for affordable housing is the federal tax credit, which developers rely on hugely because they sell those credits to their investors. And that forms the sort of core of financing. It's filled in with a whole bunch of other sources. I was very shocked to learn that the best of those credits, which is what a 9-year, I think, is 90%. I'm sorry, 90%. It is a competitive one. There's a 4% credit, which is not competitive. But the good one is the 90%. And among the criteria is to score communities is whether they're communities like us, which are opportunity areas, because the feds are looking for economic integration. And not, you don't get high points if you're in urban area. You get this one, you get high points if you're in Madison. We have all of those conditions. What we don't have is affordable land and infrastructure. So if we can sort of put a package together, especially if we can think about possibility of using town sort of land, repurposing or fresh build. That goes a long way easing the difficulty of financing for developers. In fact, I just happened to meet someone who's part of a major developer and a lot of work in Connecticut. You guys from Madison, so we'd really like to come talk. We think that's the kind of town we can do business in. And so if we had, the developer is in some, and the developer is welcome some. I think we could put together some deals of our own, at least put them together. So see who would be interested. So we're a long way off from having concrete recommendations. But it's not something that was at all going to be obvious. It's like it's a journey.
Thanks.
I think the one thing also to add is that, these affordable development projects, they're very mixed use. So you have market rate units typically, you've got units at 80% of the median income in town, 60%, 40, and actually that is what's most successful. So it's not, they really are providing kind of a diversity of housing and a diversity of price. And that's what the developers find is actually most successful, both to economically work, to attract the right credits, to maintain and gain traction and acceptance in the town. So I think it's important. And we've also been shown and seen some of these buildings that have been built, and they're beautiful. They look like they fit into the surrounding communities in Old Saybrook. If you drove past them, you would have no idea that there are deeded affordable units in these buildings. And so I think it's important to note that we're not looking to have, sort of cinder block buildings built at, for affordable housing, that these are buildings that ultimately we want in our community.
And that's something the committee is going to be doing in the next few months, taking a little field trip to some affordable housing developments to see some successful builds.
Yeah.
To get some
Just in case
information
you
and
don't
understanding.
know what 80% of the area median is, it's over $100,000 in Madison.
Going up.
Yeah, and going up, and that's what the state, capital A affordable housing is. The deeded stuff has to be at least no more than Eric said, all the successful projects have a mixture of income levels and revenue size.
When you say mixed use, could it also include commercial and residential?
Absolutely, yeah. We saw a video of developments in Massachusetts where they were looking.
That's my next question.
Yeah, researchers found every strip mall in Massachusetts and rated them on a variety of criteria and took only the best 10% and tried various ways of putting in mixed use. In some instances, completely repurposing the strip mall, bulldozing it and putting in affordable housing. In other cases, putting affordable housing on top of commercial on the ground floor. And I can't recall the total numbers, but if you just did the top 10%, you could solve the affordable housing problem for the whole state of Massachusetts.
Glad to hear you talk about Massachusetts because that was my next question and I didn't want to ask you to do more work, but I wondered if you were looking at states nearby as well, because I know my sister lives in Massachusetts in a development that's an affordable mixed use project, huge, successful, great. It's, to me, it's like you drive in, you think this is what we want. And so I know they're out there and
Yeah.
great that you all are looking into it.
I think that's, Bennett touched on it earlier when he mentioned SCROG, and SCROG has had a housing working group for several years. And it involves all of the members of our COG and all of, we meet regularly throughout the year, work with all of the stakeholders in the community. So it's often affordable housing committees, it's town planners, it's zoning, it's just volunteers. And those meetings serve as educational opportunities, opportunities to see other examples, questions. And so that's been a great resource, just even their database on their website for older videos or articles or information that the committee can rely on. So that's been something that this committee has gotten involved in. Through SCROG and this working group, we have been lucky enough to work with a facilitator. It's actually David Fink's son, Ben. And so he's been coming in, and communities can decide that they'd like to work with him. And so he's been coming in. It started out with just Ben and I, and then kind of expanded a little bit to Heather Noblin, our senior services assistant director, and Molly Fahey from Youth and Family. And we've grown this group, and now we have members of our affordable housing committee in this. And our goal really is to try to just reach out on a community level, start listening to folks, learn who these people of power are in the community, not necessarily leaders, but folks that we can, who everybody goes to, whether it's in your place of worship or firehouse or whatever community, your neighborhood group, and starting with these one-on-one conversations and slowly growing into these neighborhood meetings or community meetings, so that as we start listening and hearing and getting everybody just in the conversation of housing, as we start to develop policies and talk about these things, we're likely to have more support moving forward, because these are ideas that have come from the members in our community from the very beginning. So that's a great initiative that we've been working on for almost a year now with Ben. He came aboard last fall and will be working with us again. So it's nice to see that grow, and anybody's welcome to participate in that working group with us. And I think, John, you met with Ben not that long ago also.
I did. It's a fantastic effort that they have, really doing some community organizing around this issue.
Yeah. And on a regional level, so that is important, as you said, looking elsewhere. And so we have realized, and SCROG has been making a good effort, and Madison has been actively participating in that effort. So I think that would be my recommendation, to continue these steps.
Great.
See where we go. Yeah. I just wanted to give Laura Downs is here as well, and in the audience and watching. And Laura, if you want to speak or be a part of conversation on housing, you're welcome to. If you can raise your hand, or I could just give you the option to kind of come over as a panelist if you're interested. If not, you can decline. But I did want to give you, since this is kind of a roundtable discussion here and not really a hearing, if you did want to join the conversation, you're welcome to. And let us know your thoughts. And let's see and Tom, of course, did you want to talk on housing, or did you want to talk on other?
Well, I'm prepared to give you an update on the WPCA and our activities, but some points were made. Clearly that affordable housing means density, which runs into the problem of infrastructure. And as was pointed out, septic systems require land, and without what we refer to as a sewer system, you're pretty limited as to how many dwelling units you can get on a parcel. So they kind of go hand in hand. And I'll talk a little bit about that when you ask me for an update on the WPCA activities.
I guess that's up to everybody. If you're.
Did Laura want to say anything?
No, she didn't. She didn't come over, but she's welcome to.
Okay.
Raise her hand if something comes to mind. I'm happy to move her over. John, did you have something else?
No, I after he said if someone is interested in hearing about the WPCA, I was about to say I'm interested in hearing about the WPCA.
Okay, good. Let's hit it, Tom. Update us.
Report, right, John?
Yeah. Well, okay. My name is Tom Hanson. I'm the chairman of Madison Water Pollution Control Authority. Someone said, well, what is that? Well, the WPCA is mandated by the state that every town and city must have a WPCA. It could be, sometimes it's absorbed by the selectmen, planning and zoning can sometimes serve as the WPCA. There's different ways of doing it. In Madison, it's a distinct group called the Pollution Control Authority. And we have 5 members, and we work with the Madison Health Department, Trent Joseph. I'm an engineer, 40 years experience as a sanitary engineer. There's a couple of other engineers that sit on the authority. There's an environmental specialist on our authority, and there's a physician on. So, and we're all residents of town, just like you. We don't get paid. We sit, we do, you know, what's expected of us regularly. And some towns have a WPCA, which is also a sewer authority. Now, those would be towns that have sewer systems, pipe in the ground, treatment plants, et cetera. And this stems from, I can't cite the actual law, but the town, every town is responsible for all of the wastewater generated within its borders. Responsible for the management and disposal of all the wastewater within its borders. And the Madison has a water pollution control plan that the WPCA has written and updates regularly. Wastewater management in Madison is essentially 100% on-site disposal systems, what we would call septic systems. And the septic systems are designed and permitted, I shouldn't say designed, they're permitted by the town's health department and inspected by the sanitarium when new ones are built. But the design and operation of septic systems is really defined by the state Department of Public Health, their rules and regulations regarding septic systems. And our health department administers that program for the town of Madison to make sure that the management of wastewater is properly handled through these on-site systems. There are some specialty systems that are permitted by DEEP, which go beyond what the sanitarian and the health department can address. And those would be larger systems, some restaurants, specialty systems like the Hughes is one.
High school.
Yeah, there's some specialties, but essentially we are responsible for 100% of the public wastewater systems in town. So in 1981, the state has a program known as the Wastewater Facilities Plan. It's under the Clean Water Fund. And every town is supposed to have a wastewater facilities plan that looks out into the future and makes an assessment as to what wastewater disposal needs will be in 10, 15, 20 years. The town's last facilities plan was done in 1981. And the facilities plan basically said, well, Madison is going to continue with on-site systems kind of indefinitely. There were some problem areas cited. There was some recommendations to do groundwater monitoring, but that's quite an old plan. What is it, 40 years old, right? 40-something years old. And the Water Pollution Control Authority has raised some concerns and issues that they would like addressed. Many properties, new and repaired septic systems have to go in the ground with a variance because they don't have the room to meet the requirements of the public health code. So when they come up for repair or even installation, the town sanitarian has to make a judgment call as to how these systems can be adequately repaired on lots that are too small. They have separating distances from wells, et cetera. So he has to work with the regulations as best he can. There's also a lot of old systems in town, especially south of Route 1. A modern septic system is a tank and a leaching field, pretty simple, straightforward, well understood process. But there are cesspools in town which don't have that treatment component of a septic tank. So they don't treat the wastewater as adequately as a modern septic system would be. And frankly, many of the systems are undersized. They were built as summer homes, predating a water pollution control plan. And these systems are in the ground. They may be functioning well from the perspective of the homeowner, but from a protection of groundwater pollution, they don't do the job. There's also a rising issue that's been around for a while, nitrogen disposal. Nitrogen gets into Long Island Sound, creates environmental problems, salt marsh, those type of, and even a modern septic system does not remove nitrogen. It's a component of wastewater that ends up in the groundwater. And now, of course, we have sea level rise. Sea level rise is going to affect properties along the shoreline. Obviously, if your septic system is in the area of inundation, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. It's important to note that our mandate is water pollution control. It's not economic development. It's not directed towards affordable housing or business development or anything like that. It's water pollution control. That's our mandate. And in the 2013 Plan of Conservation and Development, which is now going to be outdated, two things were brought up. One was that the town should perform an updated wastewater facilities plan to develop the program looking forward for wastewater management. And number two, a downtown sewer study should be performed. Those are two different things, because one, well, they're related, of course, but the wastewater facilities plan really relates to groundwater pollution. The downtown sewer study, although it's important for groundwater pollution, it's really driven more by economics than water pollution. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. So we finally got the approval to do a wastewater facilities plan last year. The selectmen appropriated the money for it. The state came on board and said, we're going to fund 50% of the study. That's part of the state clean water fund. And that is underway now. We do have a consultant, Weston and Sampson Engineers. They've been working on that for a few months now. And the objectives are to look at the current conditions in the town of Madison with regard to wastewater disposal, do a needs assessment, identifying problem areas, whether they be developed areas or other problem areas as noted by the health department, variances and things like that. And to beef up or modify as necessary the on-site disposal rules and regulations for the town. And or to look at other alternatives, such as, do we need a sewer system somewhere? And again, focusing on the water pollution control issues. So that's where we are now. The consultant has done most of the data gathering and researched the public health records. They've looked at soil conditions, groundwater conditions in the town, density. Not surprisingly, the areas of most concern are south of Route 1, close to the beaches, those environmental receptors. Groundwater takes a little bit of a step back because most of those areas are serviced by public water. So some of the issues regarding separation between septic and well are kind of going away. because people can connect to public water. That's not to say that it's okay to pollute the groundwater. The state says we are not allowed to pollute the groundwater, even if you're not drinking the groundwater. So we have to be responsive to the state in developing this facilities plan. And when we're completed with the facilities plan, whatever recommendations we make, whether they be continuing to use septic systems in most areas, maybe put some overlaying controls on septic systems in other areas, or go to a sewer system, which maybe is like a community septic system, those kind of, whatever we recommend as the plan, the state will review that plan and say, okay, this plan is consistent with DEEP's mandate. And they will fund, to the extent that the Clean Water Fund will fund them, they will fund those alternatives. So if there's a septic system, or a sewer system being built, we will be eligible to apply for funding for that. So we are in the process of doing that study. And a couple of things that came up, well, even among our authority, there's some disagreement as to what would constitute a level of concern to build a sewer system. Sewer systems are extraordinarily expensive. Digging holes in the ground, tearing up streets, building treatment plants. Don't forget, Madison, Clinton, Guilford, nobody's got a treatment plant. We can't just build a sewer system and send it somewhere. We have to build a treatment plant. You're talking millions and millions of dollars. And that cost has to be weighed against what we determine to be the environmental benefit. The criteria for coming up with a recommended plan is not just water pollution control, but practicality, acceptability, and financing. And we're about to get into that with our consultant now, as we look at the severity of the problems and what the alternatives are. Now, I mentioned economic development before. The problem with building a sewer system is this, and I've been around with the sewer system. If you take Main Street, Madison, it's been talked, well, you know, businesses, you know, nail shops, coffee shops, you know, there's opportunity there, maybe to put in some more high-end restaurants, to do something else there. Well, to do that, you need better infrastructure. Okay? You can build a sewer, and you can build a treatment plant. Build a treatment plant out at where the park is or something. Who's going to pay for that system? I mean, the state will fund it. But the property owners in downtown are not the business owners. So if we build a sewer system for downtown and we assess every property owner $100,000, they're not going to continue to rent buildings to nail salons and coffee shops. And when I sat at a meeting with the strategic planning group, it's ongoing now too, there's a lot of conflicting proposals there. One of the things people like, what we love our downtown, it's so quiet and peaceful, and, you know, little shops, you know, I do too, I love it. Okay. But some people say, oh, we should have a sewer system there, we can do a lot more. Well, those are not going to exist together. Those are competing alternatives. So the WPCA has intentionally, and we talked about this with the selectmen quite a bit, we're not addressing downtown. Whatever we decide to do for on-site systems throughout the town will apply to downtown, but we're not going to get into the structural alternative evaluation. That's a completely different animal. Someone has to go in and look at the economic development potential, how it's going to be paid for, what kind of businesses we want downtown, how will this bring the tax base up, you know what I'm talking about. So I'm only making that point to say that the WPCA is separate from those concerns. So what we come out with as our plan in a few months, which will be subject to everybody's review, will probably be better on-site management controls for things like nitrogen and dense areas. There's a lot of technological improvements in individual septic systems that can be applied. There are better ways to treat the wastewater in a septic tank, to dispose of it in a shallow field. There's a lot of things that have been going along, and we've been using them in town. And they also include a component of very limited sewering for densely developed areas, maybe along the shoreline, where the sewers will bring the wastewater up to a common leaching field. So, very localized kind of solutions. And that's where we are now. That's where we're going. We think this facility plan is responsive to the 2013 POCD in terms of doing the facilities plan. One other thing that I'll just mention in passing, what we found out is that we think planning and zoning is supposed to be the Aquifer Protection Agency.
That's correct.
There's some wording in our mandate, WPC, that says that we are too. I think we're going to straighten that out. We'll just swear that way.
We'd be happy to give it to you.
Yes.
No, thank you. So any questions?
I think that was a good update. Thank you, Tom.
I do have a question.
Quite welcome.
How do you feel, Tom, as an engineer, about models and modeling that we have, existing models that we have for projections for things like flooding and sea level rise and coastal resiliency? And do you think they're adequate?
Well, we're looking at that to some extent. And I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that. I know that there's been an attempt by the town to make some changes to those ordinances and concerns, such as the look back provisions and things like that. And they haven't been met very well with by the public. One of the problems that goes well beyond what we're working with is some of these things are long-term. And we have a selectman form of government, we change selectmen year in, year out. And there's no real central guiding hand, sometimes I feel, in keeping these long-term projects on track. So I think the controls and the models are adequate, but I think the application of them is something that needs to be more centralized and more rigidly controlled. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, thanks.
That's one of the issues with WPCA. We know that we have good a good water pollution control plan, and it's going to be better when our wastewater facilities plan is complete. And we're benefited by a very good local health department, Trent Joseph and town sanitarian, very, very well-informed, technologically astute people who understand the mechanics of how to move things forward. But they are constrained. I mean, if someone's got a failing septic system, they have to get it fixed. And we can't evict the homeowner because of that. So we have to fix that system as best we can. And they do that every day, and they do a good job. But it's difficult for them to say, well, your system is a little undersized, it's outdated. We would like you to add a blower and a little filter system. Well, the homeowner might say, I'm not doing it because It's not required by code, and I don't want to pay for it. Well, if we make it required by code, subject to the sanitarian saying so, then we will accomplish that. And that's going to be how we control water pollution in the future without building $100 million sewer system in the treatment plant somewhere. And so as we move forward through this, we have to make that presentation in a way that doesn't get people all negatively affected, you know, and saying, well, we don't want to have that. So we have to work closely with the state, with the health department, and develop these plans. I know you guys deal with those kinds of things all the time. It's no surprise that they say, ooh, the public can do this.
I want to just add a comment that I moved back to Connecticut from Massachusetts. When I sold my house in Massachusetts, I had to put in a $30,000 new septic system. It was required by law by the state. So when you talk about we can't ask people to do that, can't we?
Well, the short answer, yes, we can, but where's the authority for that? Where's the study that shows that that is a good plan? That's really what the
I'll see if I
wastewater
can find it.
facilities plan. Well, that's what the wastewater facilities plan.
Yeah,
will
and
tell us.
You know, and I thought when I came to Connecticut, oh, well, it'll balance out because probably they have to do the same thing here, but no.
No, we don't. It's becoming a topic of conversation with the WPCA because it's one thing to say, yeah, we can do that. It's another thing to get compliance when it's not part of the code. And to put it in the code, you have to have some kind of a study. I mean, even the state's going to say, well, where's the basis for saying to do this? Well, that's what we're paying our consultant for. And if the consultant says it's really not something you want to do, then we won't do it. But that's where we are right now with the facilities. Such a good question.
When do you anticipate the plan to wrap up? Is it a few months in the fall?
Yeah, it's a few months, yeah, in the fall. We just had a meeting, where they gave us a draft report, but no recommended plan yet. We have a lot of comments on the draft report, as you might expect, so they're revising that. The recommended plan really has to come from the Water Pollution Control Authority, based on the data that they give us. And that's going to take a couple of months.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's nice to see something from the 2013 plan moving forward.
Get it done.
So it probably depends on soil, but how big does a lot have to be for a septic system to safely fit, effectively work?
Well, that's subject to several conditions, okay? Generally, the state, the state has done a lot of studies on this. And generally they say quarter-acre lots are D minus, where you have septic systems, because quarter-acre lots don't provide the land area and the dilution effect from rainfall to reduce nitrogen loadings when they cross the property line to the next property. The quarter-acre lots is kind of a rule of thumb, first of all. It gets those, minimum size has to go up when you have things like wells on the property, because there's a required setback between a septic system and a well, and there's setbacks between septic systems and buildings. And that's where a lot of the variances come. We say, well, you can have a septic system closer than 10 feet to your foundation. Well, in this guy's case, it's going to have to be 5 feet. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is. And it depends on soil conditions because everybody thinks that sand and gravel is a great perk rate, great for septic systems. Well, it's great for disposing of the wastewater, but it does very little to treat the wastewater. The wastewater renovation occurs in the soil above the groundwater level. where bacteria and microbes are working to clean the wastewater. And if it goes through too fast, we don't get that treatment. If it goes through too slow, it can't handle it, it breaks out. So a lot of systems today go in with what we call engineered fill. Material specifically specified that gives you a good perk rate, but not too fast, and you get some renovation. And so in the past, it's always been, oh, I can do small lots here because I have sand and gravel. But now we're saying, well, not so fast, because then we have a density issue related to inadequate renovation of wastewater because it goes through too fast. So there's a lot of different things going on, but and we know what they are, but it's difficult in an established town. These houses have been here for 50, 60, 70 years. You have places like Dutch Village, there's things going on that we're trying to balance on how the regulations should be modified to incorporate everyone's needs and the mandate of the WPCA to protect groundwater.
I have kind of a dumb question, showing my naivete, but how long do new sewage treatment plants typically last?
You mean like a municipal plant?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
New Haven or something? Well, the EPA guidelines, which were developed when the Clean Water Fund was passed, where is that? That's back in the 70s. They say design of the hard facilities, buildings, tanks, is 50 years. Okay, mechanical equipment like pumps and things like that, more like 20 years. But the interesting thing that's happened in the last 20 years or so is the changes in the technology available to treat wastewater. Back in the day, we built big tanks, we pumped air into them, we grew all the bugs died. The water got 90% clean and out into the river. Over the years, we've been able, and that takes a lot of space, takes acres, right, for a small city. Now we've got things like membranes, microfilters, high efficiency blowers, many improvements that have shrunk the size and complexity of these treatment plants. And that's been driving the life cycle. Because now maybe you keep a plant for 10 years, but then some great new technology comes along and you don't want to, it's a benefit to redo the plant. And of course, the state, we had for many years, it was just, biological loading, solids, things like that. Then we started to test for nitrogen. And then all the plants had to build nitrogen facilities to remove nitrogen. Now in Connecticut, it's phosphorus. Okay. Now they're all being modified to take phosphorus out. So improvements come along at regular intervals, either from the regulatory side or from the private enterprise side, which kind of drives when these plants get rebuilt. It's interesting. I've been around a long time, and I've seen that happen from the early days of the Clean Water Fund when plants were first really being built to what they build today. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Is anyone doing life cycle assessments on both old and new technologies?
Yeah.
For sure. It's a very dynamic business right now in the water pollution control field. A lot of equipment suppliers, a lot of chemical companies, and they're always coming up with a new thing. Now, for septic systems, there's been a lot of cool stuff. Wicking systems for disposal instead of those leaching trenches. And those are all coming in, but they can only come in as fast as people are building septic systems or repairing them. but we're looking at that as part of the wastewater facilities, but just to make sure that our health department has the tools and the authority to require certain improvements above and beyond the public health code where that is warranted. And if everybody kind of buys into that, we should have a nice plan moving forward. Big problems that we don't have a solution for is inundation from sea level rise. I mean, you saw that with the resiliency study. What do we do? They retreat, what they call retreat or abandoned facilities. I mean, it's, you know, luckily it's a small percentage of properties, but it's something you really don't have an answer for. If that comes true, what you say it's going.
So it's an easy silver bullet, right? Do I understand you?
Yeah. Nothing's ever easy.
Any other wastewater questions? And I see we have one other member of the public joined us, Angela. If we're doing open conversation on plan of conservation and development and our built environment, which includes infrastructure, housing, transportation, all of these things. So if you joined us to give us some feedback or some suggestions, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you over and welcome you into the conversation. While we're waiting to see if Angela's interested, is there anything else? Or do you think, John, at this point, do we attempt to use some of our feedback while we're waiting for some other information and kind of the feedback that we have gained from the strategic plan outreach, and try to put these in the sense of some overall policies and some action items for our next meeting?
Yeah, I think that's precisely what we would do next is taking in, and let me share the screen again. Bring up this is the current working draft that has our natural environment stuff that we worked on. And so where we have set this up is, again, with the paired the paired goals, so vitality and connectivity. We established a few broad policies for each of those. So in the case of the natural environment, it's focused on understanding and sharing knowledge of natural environment. Talk a little bit about that, and then break that down into specific actions. You know, so establish a couple of broad policies, and then add some actions again under the guiding thematic pairs. So what we would do in a similar way, based on the feedback that we've gotten thus far, and I've as we were talking this evening, starting to sketch this out, would be under vitality and connectivity, put things like the transportation infrastructure elements, community resources and facilities. Under resilience and sustainability, establish some broad policies and then goals for historic preservation, climate change, regulatory change, and then opportunity and growth. Then looking at issues of economic development and housing opportunity, which sort of takes the broad areas of the built environment and sort of sorts them into that character, those goals, and then we'll establish some specific policies. And again, what this will be is a working draft, and we'll hopefully get some more input, Aaron, from the stakeholder groups that you had done some outreach to, and we can incorporate some of their feedback into those specific, because we haven't had a great deal of conversation about some of the specifics of transportation, you know, the former Nine-Town Transit or whatever it's called now, or Shoreline East, or the, you know, what have you. So we'll look to incorporate as much as we can. But yeah, basically look to have a draft outline framework of those policies and actions for next time.
Be great.
Sound good?
It's good to me.
Okay. Well, thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks,
Appreciate
John.
your
Oh,
efforts
so-
today, and thanks
This was fascinating.
everybody for joining us
Yeah,
for the
thanks for coming.
conversation.
Guys, really appreciate it. Well,
Thanks for all your efforts.
I think what,
So-
No one has an easy job in this room.
Could I ask Tom a quick question about the what was the legislative framework of not forcing or being able to force people to upgrade septic systems before they sell? Because that is something that I believe the Essex Health Department did do with a property owner, actually former first selectman. They made him put in a new septic system before he could sell. But is that just a locally established policy?
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't realize it was there.
Yeah, as far as I know, there's no state requirement for that. So it would be a locally established policy.
But there's no outright prohibition.
What's that?
There's not a state prohibition on that. It's just
I don't know. We don't do it in Madison. So
Right, okay.
it's probably not a state. I think a lot of people would look at that and say, well, you know, that's a can of worms, right? I mean, most people when they sell a house, they have their system inspected, and the inspector will look at the components of the system, and if it's failing or needs replacement, it's usually baked into the sale, okay? But
Sure.
it would be a repair of an existing system and not necessarily an upgrade to a better level of treatment. If, for example, you owned a house in an area that the town designates as an area of concern or a specialized wastewater management district, and they said in that district, every new or repaired septic system needs to have a filter and an aeration system to remove nitrogen. Then that would be different than what's going on now. What's going on now is the system, is the tank okay? It's not broken, it's not missing a baffle or something. Just put it back the way it should be.
Right.
But if we establish an area of town and say this is an area of concern, we may in fact require an elevated level of performance from the septic systems.
But in order to do that, does this have to be identified in the facilities study?
Yes.
Okay.
The facilities plan will serve as the basis for establishing.
policy.
I mean, it's a legal and a regulatory thing. I mean, it's gonna be, you know, if you haven't established the scientific and health criteria for making that improvement, it's going to be hard to require. But, right, and it's like with any code, you know, fire codes and building codes and things like that. You know, we're just gonna have to require that they meet that code when they're rebuilt or repaired.
Okay.
Not
Thank you.
necessarily, well, or when the house is sold, you're right about that. Yeah, I mean, the conditions could be set that would be the requirement, yeah.
Well, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you guys decide with your policies. I don't want to belabor it. I just want to make one last comment that my old friends in Clinton would be tickled that someone from Madison said, and this is on the record, on a recorded meeting, great things are happening in Clinton. That's quite a statement.
We appreciate what they're doing.
I think one comment I'd make is that and you guys think of, this is just thinking out loud, but it seems to me that the natural environment portion is a little easier than the built environment. Because there's, I suspect, more of a consensus in the community no one's talking about taking the North Rock Park and removing it and selling it off, you know, I mean, there's a lot of support. And it's doable without a lot of money. But this is different. It's gonna be harder and there's more interconnected variables. Or so, to use your language, the holistic approach, it's gonna take us some time to put together a document that really does that. So we've got a lot of work to do. And it's important to get it right.
And it's August.
It's August. So-
No pressure. Great. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yes,
Move along on our agenda.
thank you.
You all are welcome to stay.
Okay,
If you
John.
leave and you want to take a cucumber.
Be in touch.
oh my
All
God.
right, thanks, man.
I'm getting my way mine as well. I've
It's
got
that-
eggplant if I bring them next
Oh,
time.
no, I got
Oh,
it.
Thank you so much for.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
for having us.
Thank you.
Last week, and any of you so inclined to attend one of our meetings, I'm sure you'd be.
Let me know when they are, seriously.
Great, thanks.
Oh, of course.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, and we have Felicia. Felicia, thanks for your patience. Can you hear us, Felicia? Can you hear us, Felicia?
Alicia is muted.
Can you hear us, Felicia?
See, you can-
There you are.
Okay, can't hear you, Felicia, yet, but hopefully.
Oh, no. You must be in Bill's office. Yeah, we can hear you. You can't
Okay,
hear
you
me?
can hear me now?
Yes. you're
Okay.
good.
Great. Yes. Hi.
Okay.
Hold on.
excellent.
There we go. There we go. Thank you for
Thanks.
having me.
Thanks for your patience, but I thought it was better to squeeze you in tonight than make you wait another 2 weeks.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Do you want me to share my screen to review the locations? Would that be the easiest for everyone, or do you have it with you?
If you have it up, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I can pull it up, whatever you
Yeah.
like.
I have it up.
The two charging stations. and then-
Do you have a preference if we start at the senior center or Memorial Town Hall? Which one?
Now, what do we have first? We have Memorial Town Hall first, but doesn't
All
matter.
right, then here you go. All right, so I believe,
And Felicia, you have John Matthews' site plan too?
I don't have that pulled up for, I do have that pulled up. Yes, I have that pulled up as
That's
well.
an easy one too.
You want me to share that one instead?
Yeah, we could just do the overall if you want.
Okay, let me,
And
where
these-
did I
We
put
did
that?
one of these at Scranton Park not that long ago, and these two kind of held back because they're both actually located in the historic district. And so we just, Felicia successfully went through and received her certificates of approval this past month, actually July's meeting. And
Yes.
so now we're finally ready to move forward with administrative approval from the commission. It's a site plan modification.
Yes. Okay, so this is, let's see, where's Memorial Town Hall? Sorry, here we are. So this is Memorial Town Hall. This actually isn't John's. This is the overall package. Is this okay, Erin? If we
Fine.
talked this?
Can everyone kind of familiarize themselves with that?
Sure.
Yeah. I've got I have the paper plan here too, Felicia.
Okay, great.
That's fine.
Yes. So as Erin mentioned, we did go through the historic commission for their approvals on this. The plan is to add two charging dual ports so that each charger can charge 2 cars. Right now, we're moving ahead with one of those. So we would be making 2 parking spaces in the back of Memorial Town Hall. And then as you can see over here, we would also be striping for ADA compliance with one of those spaces. These stripes we've lined up with the emergency exit of the building so that that will never be blocked by vehicular traffic. So it serves a dual purpose on that. And we've also laid this out to be cognizant of Lee Academy's emergency exits out the back and their future plans for a brick walkway out the back way so that everything can fit in here. It is going on what was previously used as parking spaces. We will be doing a little bit of paving as part of this project just to get rid of some divots and some cracking asphalt to make sure that there's no tripping hazards and everything is smooth and nice for parking. And then they will be line striped in green with stencils. The actual ports themselves are mounted directly to the brick wall. The location was chosen because of the ease of access to an existing municipal owned electrical source that we can tap into and run conduit across the back of the wall with minimal footprint and minimal need for trenching and all of that. And it's also a central location. So that is why this location has been chosen.
Questions?
Questions?
Alicia, what about signage for people to find it? You're gonna place signs anywhere?
Currently, there are no signs. How these ports are located is there is an app that most electrical vehicle users use to find available charging stations. So the app will direct you where to go. And then the signage would be the green stencil locations on the ground, indicating that it is a parking spot reserved for electrical vehicle charging.
Okay.
Thanks, Felicia. Could you also show us the other one near the senior center?
Yes. Let's see.
Yeah.
So this is the proposed locations for the senior center. This again is two dual ports with the capability to charge 2 vehicles each. So there would be 4 spaces here. Again, as you could see by the red dashes, this location was selected because of the location next to a town-owned electric source. So minimal trenching here. We are using the existing wooden barrier as bollards to protect the pedestal mounted ports. And again, providing some striping so that one of these can serve as an ADA compliant parking space for the charging stations as well.
And just to clarify, this is not at 29 Bradley Road. This is located across the street in the parking lot of School Street. So it's,
Which is what put it in the historic district.
yes, so we had a little confusion with addresses.
Yes.
Yeah, just to clarify, this is on the Academy Field side with that municipal parking lot.
You're the congregational church, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
Felicia, can I ask a quick question?
Mhm.
The energy that the cars would use, where is it coming from?
The charging energy,
Yes.
it is coming from the electrical source, just as anything plugged into it would. Part of this proposal is to have software in there that can charge per kilowatt, so that the town is getting a revenue off of this when a car plugs in.
Okay, where is the energy coming from? Is it coming from nuclear?
There's no way to know.
Wind?
Oh, from,
Nowhere to know that?
There's no way
Coal?
to know.
No way to know. It's just provided from the
Mhm.
electrical source, just as, you know, the sources for the buildings are provided by Eversource.
Eversource.
Eversource, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, that's the answer, so.
Yes.
Any other questions? We thought we'd combine the two unless anyone objects to that and just go
No.
ahead and vote to approve.
Yep, approve the
as per the
applications
plans and
that-
the presentation.
as per John Matthews' site plans, yes.
Great.
Motion approved.
Okay, second,
I'll second it.
further discussion? All in favor? Hi, John
John,
Morgan.
Do we have a quorum?
We have John Morgan.
Oh,
You have
John,
5
not John.
members.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think we're up.
Okay.
Yep, you're
gotcha.
over a quorum. Okay, congratulations, Felicia.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
You
Thanks.
too.
Thanks, Felicia.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, moving
Yeah, go ahead.
through the agenda, we have much tabled to August 17th meeting. Talk about these at all, Aaron? And then we had one that we had moved to open for August 17th, but now request to open and continue to September 21st.
Yes, so that motion can happen at the August meeting.
Okay.
I just was keeping you apprised of where we are. So there's no further action for this evening. We have one received this evening, which is application 35, 28 Toffee Lane, which is a site plan, coastal site plan application. And that would be a request to table that application until the September meeting to allow for comments from DEEP.
Okay,
To
great.
be returned.
Is that the one that a letter was received at like 5:20 today? It'll go in, it'll be on file.
It's not a public hearing, so I'm not sure
Yeah.
what that is.
Okay, in that case, we'll move on to approval of minutes. Secretary Dusa?
Wonderful. July 20th, 2023 meeting. Members present were Snow, Duza, Reinhardt, Peckinpah, O'Connor, Morgan, and Bugda. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve. Michael, second.
I'll second.
Val, any discussion of edits or corrections?
I did have a couple of, pulling up my version here.
Yes.
There was a, Commissioner Morgan voted that the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission approved. It was actually a motion that was made. This was for 23-2930 Bassett Lane. I think it's just a language
No
issue.
motion versus voted?
Yeah,
Okay.
like Commissioner Morgan didn't actually vote on that. He was presenting the motion that we voted on. That's a little correction. And then I just wanted to add about 454 Horse Pond Road, the historic building, it says it will be demolished. That, they're proposing to demolish it, but I don't know if we should make the statement that it will be demolished.
Unless that, not to put words in Mr. Mack's mouth, but that is the intent of the proposal, I think. So maybe just
To be.
clarifying that the proposal
Or
is
it's
to.
proposed to demolish.
Yep, proposed to demolish.
Yeah, I would prefer that, and then I would add 1739 Captain Daniel Hand House to the
Yes,
historic
yes,
structure.
right.
Because I did
The
raise
proposal is to
that,
destroy this valuable.
well, an important, possibly an important historic house that needs to be discussed. It'll go,
Right,
you explained,
right.
Aaron, how it will go before the Historic District Commission
Not so fast.
versus, a demolition
Oh,
approval.
yeah, and the applicant's aware of.
And it does say that there'll be
delay
a process,
requirements.
yeah,
Mhm.
the appropriate process. I just wanted to
That's a nice.
strengthen it a little bit. That's okay.
So Mitch is saying that there was some discussion of the historical importance of that house.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that
It was the deed.
it's proposed to be demolished as opposed to it will be. It probably will be, but at this
One
stage.
step at a time.
Yeah,
One step at a
exactly.
time. We don't,
Thank you.
we won't prejudge.
So Aaron has
Bad.
got those notes.
Yes, Raquel is here. She's got them.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Otherwise, it's great.
Motion, vote to approve? In favor?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
John is a yes.
Any further remarks? Not from me.
None from me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Great, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, John.
Bye.
Motion to adjourn.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?